Hollywood loves to act shocked until you dig up the movies they tried hardest to hide. Forget what your film school professor said about classics. The 1940s and 50s were a wild frontier where sex, violence, and taboo topics danced just out of reach of the censors. So why did these films spark protests, bans, and secret studio cover-ups? Which masterpiece nearly tanked careers or made a whole town riot? Buckle up, you're about to see why the golden age was never squeaky clean. The Outlaw, 1943. Before Marilyn Monroe ever slipped into a white dress, Jane Russell's famous curves were breaking the American box office and nearly bringing the Hollywood morality police to their knees. The Outlaw isn't just a Western, it's a cultural grenade. Produced by the mad genius Howard Hughes, who was never known for subtlety, this flick was supposed to be about Billy the Kid and Doc Holliday. Instead, it became a nationwide scandal, and for one reason only: cleavage. Hughes designed a custom brassiere for Russell, engineered in secret, that promised to make her the most notorious woman in America. And boy, did it work. The marketing machine went nuclear. Newspapers screamed about indecency, religious groups called for a boycott, and the film was slapped with a ban in several states. But here's the punchline. The more outrage the movie provoked, the longer the lines at the box office. That's right. Moral panic sold tickets. Censors demanded cuts. Hughes played hardball, pulling the film, then re-releasing it with even more sensational advertising. Russell herself was splashed across billboards, lounging in the hay with a come-hither look that made the Hays Code enforcers faint. The film spent years bouncing between bans and releases, with scenes trimmed, restored, or outright hidden depending on which state you were in. Was it the story that made The Outlaw infamous? Hardly. Critics panned the plot, but nobody was there for the script. In the end, it didn't matter. The Outlaw turned Jane Russell into a Hollywood legend and Howard Hughes into a folk hero for every studio boss with a secret grudge against the censors. The message was clear. If you want people to see your movie, let them know they're not supposed to. Double Indemnity, 1944. You want to talk about dangerous women and rotten men? Double Indemnity practically wrote the rule book. In a decade ruled by wholesome war heroes and virtuous housewives, Billy Wilder's steamy film noir was like a shot of whiskey in Sunday school punch. Here's a film where the femme fatale, Phyllis Dietrichson, played by Barbara Stanwyck in a platinum wig sharper than a razor blade, seduces a nice guy insurance agent into murder, fraud, and double-crossing mayhem. The censors? They went ballistic. The Hays Code, Hollywood's self-appointed morality committee, wanted nothing to do with adultery, murder, or sympathy for evil. The script went through so many rewrites, Wilder joked he'd need his own insurance policy just to finish it. Studios begged the production code office for approval, only to get a laundry list of things that absolutely could not be shown, said, or implied. But here's the real controversy. Double Indemnity didn't just tell a bad story, it made you root for the villains. Every sultry glance, every whispered threat, and every sweaty-palmed moment pushed viewers to the edge. Audiences ate it up, but moral crusaders wanted it burned. Reviewers called it a nasty piece of work. Churches urged parishioners to boycott. None of that stopped the buzz. The movie racked up Oscar nominations and rewrote the rules of what crime dramas could get away with. Phyllis and Walter's story didn't end well. Spoiler, they both go down in flames. But the real winners were every future director who wanted to slip a little darkness into their drama. The scandal didn't bury Double Indemnity. It made it immortal. The Lost Weekend, 1945. Forget everything you think you know about old Hollywood playing it safe. When The Lost Weekend landed in theaters, it hit the country like a brick through a stained glass window. Before this movie, drinking in the movies meant a funny drunk at a party or a hard-boiled detective with a whiskey neat. Billy Wilder, never shy about poking the bear, wanted to show alcoholism with both barrels. Ray Milland stars as Don Burnham, a writer in the grips of a four-day bender so raw, so honest that even the bottle-shy critics couldn't look away. You want controversy? The liquor industry begged Paramount not to release the film. Some theater chains flat out refused to book it, terrified it would make drinking look like a death sentence and take their concession sales with it. And the moralists? They lost their minds. How dare a movie show a respectable man unraveling, hallucinating, begging, and stealing for his next drink? What's brilliant is how Gable navigates the line between hero and outcast. Christian is no saint. He's a man pushed to his limits by cruelty and injustice. The moral questions at the heart of the film are as relevant now as they were in 1935. When is it right to defy authority, and what's the cost of freedom? And let's talk about the visuals: fog-drenched ships, rolling waves, and Gable's steel-eyed glare cutting through it all. This movie was a genuine phenomenon. It won the Oscar for Best Picture and turned Gable into a symbol of rebellion. Off-screen, Gable was so committed to authenticity, he refused to wear a wig for the role, despite the studio's demands for period accuracy. That's Gable, stubborn, uncompromising, and always ready to break the rules, on screen and off. If you want to see where the myth of the cinematic anti-hero was born, drop anchor here. The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946. When you picture post-war Hollywood, you might imagine prim ladies and dapper gents trading witty banter. But The Postman Always Rings Twice ripped the curtains wide open. Lana Turner in that all-white outfit, the one the censors swore was too provocative, set the stage for a story so steamy, even the title felt like an innuendo. Based on James M. Cain's already infamous novel, this movie was practically destined for trouble. It's a tale of lust, murder, and betrayal, a drifter, a dissatisfied wife, and a plan to bump off the husband. What could possibly go wrong? How about this? The censors tried to strangle the story before it could even hit theaters. The source novel had been condemned as immoral filth since the 30s, and earlier attempts to adapt it were dead on arrival. The Production Code Administration wrung its hands over every scene. Murder was dicey, adultery scandalous, lustful glances between Turner and John Garfield practically radioactive. But MGM wasn't about to let a little thing like moral panic kill their blockbuster. They got creative, sneaking the bad stuff past the censors by wrapping every salacious scene in a layer of plausible deniability. Sure, Lana's Cora never said what she was thinking, but that look on her face, the audience knew, and when the movie finally premiered, people lined up in droves. Some critics panned it, religious groups called for boycotts, but the buzz was nuclear. Decades later, The Postman Always Rings Twice is recognized as a masterclass in subversive storytelling. Its fingerprints are all over modern noir, and its controversies are the reason it's still talked about today. Sometimes, the real scandal is what you leave unsaid. Gentleman's Agreement, 1947. You think the Hollywood blacklist was only about communism? Think again. Gentleman's Agreement put anti-Semitism on blast in an era when most studios preferred to sweep ugly realities under the rug. When 20th Century Fox greenlit this adaptation of Laura Z. Hobson's novel, industry insiders whispered, "Big mistake." America was barely 2 years past W4's, and addressing bigotry openly on screen was a powder keg. Gregory Peck stars as a magazine writer who goes undercover as a Jewish man, only to run headlong into a wall of polite, respectable discrimination. The plot itself is explosive, but the real fireworks were happening off-camera. Jewish studio heads and advertisers worried the film would stir up trouble or, worse, tank at the box office. Anti-Defamation League? Nervous. The Catholic Church? Scandalized. Southern theater owners? They called it dangerous propaganda and threatened bans. The hate mail started early, some of it so vicious that Peck kept it for years as a reminder of what the film was up against. Meanwhile, director Elia Kazan pushed ahead, refusing to sugarcoat the reality. The censors grumbled about incendiary subject matter, but couldn't argue with the script's cold, hard truth. Prejudice was alive and well in polite society. The aftermath? Gentlemen's Agreement didn't just cause controversy, it blew the conversation wide open. It won 3 Oscars, including Best Picture, but also led to career backlash for some involved. Rumors swirled that making the film got screenwriter Moss Hart quietly blacklisted later in the Red Scare, and some cast and crew found themselves shadow banned from polite Hollywood circles. But the real legacy? Gentlemen's Agreement proved you could tackle the nastiest American problems and still walk away with a hit. The only people truly uncomfortable were the ones who saw themselves in the villains. Black Narcissus, 1947. If you think a movie about nuns in the Himalayas would be safe, think again. Black Narcissus is pure Technicolor delirium, and for 1947, it was almost too hot to handle. British directors Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger created a fever dream of repressed desire, jealousy, and madness, cloaked in the trappings of a missionary story, but bubbling with a sexual tension that made censors break out in a cold sweat. Deborah Kerr stars as Sister Clodagh, leading a group of nuns to convert an old palace, once home to a Himalayan prince's harem, into a convent. But the location isn't just exotic, it's haunted by temptation. Senses get heightened, boundaries blur, and one nun, played by Kathleen Byron, slides into lipstick-smeared insanity. And then there's David Farrar as the rugged Englishman whose presence practically turns the convent into a powder keg. Censors on both sides of the Atlantic howled. British authorities bristled at the suggestion that nuns had sexual urges, while American censors threatened to block its release unless the erotic undercurrents were toned down. Catholic groups protested, warning audiences to steer clear. Powell and Pressburger stood their ground, refusing to neuter their film, and critics both loved and loathed them for it. The visuals alone were controversial, lavish, surreal, almost hallucinatory. Black Narcissus left viewers unsettled, critics split, and moralists furious. In the US, some theaters banned it outright, while others cut the film to ribbons. Yet, its impact is legendary. It inspired generations of filmmakers and became a cult favorite for cinephiles who like their drama served with a hint of madness. So, if you ever wondered how far old-school filmmakers could push taboo, look no further. Black Narcissus made sure that not even the convent was safe from controversy. Pinky, 1949. Hollywood wasn't ready for Pinky, and frankly, much of America wasn't either. This drama tackled race head-on in a way that still makes the industry nervous. Jean Crane plays Pinky Johnson, a light-skinned black woman passing as white in the Jim Crow South. That casting decision alone, using a white actress to play the role, kicked up a storm, but the controversy didn't stop there. The story follows Pinky as she returns home from the North, confronting her identity and the deeply rooted racism of her hometown. The film doesn't shy away from ugly truths, harassment, legal battles, social ostracism, and the never-ending question of, what are you? For 1949, this was dynamite. Civil rights groups were split. Some praised Pinky for shining a light on prejudice. Others condemned the casting as another Hollywood whitewash. The South went ballistic. Many theaters outright refused to screen it, and some city officials threatened legal action if the movie played. Fox even swapped directors mid-production. John Ford quit over creative disagreements, and Elia Kazan stepped in, undeterred by the threat of backlash. What's wild is that Pinky wasn't just a lightning rod, it was a box office hit, proving people would show up for hard truths, no matter how messy. But the aftershocks kept coming. Several cast members, including Ethel Waters, faced professional fallout for participating in something so dangerous. Jean Crane received both an Oscar nomination and a flood of hate mail. Looking back, Pinky is a landmark, not just for race in Hollywood, but for blowing up the myth that you couldn't talk about America's ugliest realities and still make bank. Sometimes the real controversy is daring to tell the truth in a room full of liars. The Asphalt Jungle, 1950. You want gritty? You want trouble? The Asphalt Jungle is ground zero for the crime pays until it doesn't genre. This isn't your parents' polite caper. It's John Huston's tough, sweaty, and unsentimental masterpiece that makes every shadow feel like a threat. In 1950, that was pure dynamite. The film dives deep into the seedy underbelly of an unnamed American city. There are no heroes here, just a gang of crooks, each with their own doomed dream, plotting a jewel heist that's so intricate it would make a Swiss watchmaker sweat. Huston's camera lingers on flop houses, grimy streets, and desperate faces. There's Marilyn Monroe in an early role, draped across a sugar daddy's lap and looking like trouble. But the real controversy? The Asphalt Jungle refused to pretend that crime was just a game. It didn't glamorize law and order or hand out neat punishments at the end. Instead, the police come off as almost as corrupt as the crooks. And the women? They're complicated, sometimes complicit, sometimes just trying to survive. Censors panicked. They demanded rewrites and reshoots. The Hayes office nearly had a meltdown over the suggestive content and lack of moral resolution. Some local authorities banned it outright, while church groups decried it as morally bankrupt. Critics called it a blueprint for criminal behavior, worried it would inspire a new generation of real-life heist artists. But guess what? Audiences were hooked. The Asphalt Jungle paved the way for noir classics and crime dramas that dared to show the world as it really was, messy, corrupt, and just a little too close to home. The real lesson? Sometimes the most dangerous movies are the ones that refuse to lie. Sunset Boulevard, 1950. If Hollywood could write its own obituary, Sunset Boulevard would be the eulogy, and what a scandalous funeral it turned out to be. Billy Wilder's 1950 classic isn't just a story about washed-up stars and desperate screenwriters. It's a savage, all-teeth-and-claws takedown of the entire movie industry, with the ink barely dry on the studio ledgers. Gloria Swanson's Norma Desmond is the faded icon who refuses to face reality, living in a crumbling mansion where time, fame, and sanity have all started to blur. From the moment a dead screenwriter floats in the pool, you know this movie isn't playing by the rules. Sunset Boulevard aired out Hollywood's dirty laundry in public, aging actresses discarded like yesterday's news, the studio's heartless machine, and the toxic dream of immortality that chews up anybody naive enough to believe in it. Wilder wasn't afraid to make enemies. Real-life stars and moguls grumbled that the movie hit too close to home. Louis B. Mayer, king of MGM, allegedly exploded after a private screening, shouting that Wilder should be tarred and feathered. The censors hated the movie's darkness, its sly necrophilic undertones, and the unapologetic way it shamed Hollywood's worst habits. Reporters loved the drama, and the Catholic Legion of Decency gave it the side-eye for its unwholesome content. Yet for all the pearl-clutching, the film was a hit. Viewers couldn't look away from the spectacle of Norma's meltdown, or the razor-sharp script that dripped with venom and tragic humor. The aftermath? Sunset Boulevard became a legend, quoted by everyone from cinephiles to pop stars. The industry might have tried to bury its own skeletons, but Billy Wilder just propped them up in the front yard. Hollywood would never be able to hide its sins the same way again. Ace in the Hole, 1951. If you think media scandals are a modern invention, Ace in the Hole will make you think twice, and maybe throw your TV out the window. Billy Wilder's second entry on this list is a brutal, unflinching indictment of journalism gone rabid. Kirk Douglas is Chuck Tatum, a disgraced reporter so desperate for a headline that he manipulates an entire town and the nation by stretching out a miner's rescue for as long as it will sell papers. The controversy was immediate and deafening. Critics called it cynical, vicious, and downright poisonous. Audiences, still used to films with plucky reporters and happy endings, were blindsided by Tatum's sleaze and the townspeople's bloodlust. Real-life journalists raged that it smeared their entire profession. Even Paramount got cold feet, rebranding the movie as The Big Carnival to tone down the damage. Censors didn't like what they saw either. The script's ruthlessness, The greedy townsfolk and the broken-down wife who only cared about publicity, none of it played by the rules. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned the film, and some theaters refused to show it at all. The message was clear: you don't air this much dirty laundry without getting splashed. But here's the twist: Ace in the Hole was too sharp, too real, and too ahead of its time to be forgotten. Critics and historians now rank it among the greatest American movies, a true prophecy of media manipulation that feels even more relevant today. Wilder's black-hearted masterpiece proved controversy can be the best press of all. A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951. There are scandals, and then there's A Streetcar Named Desire, the movie that made even the censors sweat bullets. Elia Kazan's adaptation of Tennessee Williams' play was a hand grenade lobbed into the living rooms of 1950s America. Marlon Brando's Stanley Kowalski oozed raw sexuality, violence, and that infamous animal magnetism that left critics scandalized and audiences drooling. But the real firestorm started before the cameras even rolled. The Hayes office, guardians of moral virtue, demanded script changes right and left, cutting or softening references to homosexuality, sexual assault, and mental illness. They sliced scenes, rewrote dialogue, and tried to water down Blanche Dubois's tragic spiral. Yet what survived was still sizzling. Vivien Leigh's performance as the unraveling Blanche was so intense, rumor has it even the studio execs got nervous about how adult the film felt. When the movie premiered, church groups and moral crusaders went ballistic. The Catholic Legion of Decency slapped it with a condemned rating for indecency. Southern theater owners threatened to keep it off their screens. Still, audiences flocked in droves, and critics couldn't stop arguing. Was it art or filth? The impact? Streetcar won 4 Oscars, ignited careers, and left a permanent scorch mark on what Hollywood could show and say. It also set off years of debates about censorship and the boundaries of adaptation. Kazan and Williams didn't just push the envelope. They set it on fire and mailed it to every theater in America. The Moon is Blue, 1953. If you want to know what could make 1950s America blush, look no further than The Moon is Blue. This romantic comedy became a battleground for free speech, not because of what it showed, but because of what it dared to say. The movie used words like virgin, seduce, and mistress, terms the production code considered absolutely radioactive. Director Otto Preminger, never one to play nice with the censors, refused to cut or change the dialogue. The code administrators panicked. They denied the film a certificate, thinking that would be the end of it. But Preminger called their bluff and released it anyway. The press lost their minds. How could an uncertified movie play in major theaters? Church leaders protested, and some cities banned the film outright. Here's the real kicker. The controversy only fueled ticket sales. The movie became a sensation, with crowds lining up just to see what the fuss was about. The Supreme Court even got involved, and in a landmark decision, ruled in favor of the movie's right to screen. Preminger didn't just win, he cracked the production code's armor for good. The Moon is Blue proved that you could talk about real life, sex, desire, temptation, and still draw a crowd. It was the beginning of the end for Hollywood's censorship regime, all thanks to a little comedy with a wickedly honest mouth. The Wild One, 1953. What are you rebelling against? What do you got? With that line, Marlon Brando ignited a firestorm that burned right through 1950s America. The Wild One is the original bad boy biker movie, with Brando leading a leather-clad gang into a small town and leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. It was loud, raw, and unashamedly sexy, a Molotov cocktail thrown at the face of polite post-war society. The censors nearly lost their minds. The movie was condemned for glorifying lawlessness, with scenes of violence, drinking, and suggestive behavior that had watchdog groups clutching their pearls. The British Board of Film Censors flat out banned the movie for 14 years. In the US, Southern theaters refused to screen it, and church groups warned parents not to let their kids anywhere near it. But here's the twist. The Wild One didn't invent teenage rebellion, but it gave it a face. Brando's sneer, his slouch, the iconic Triumph motorcycle. It all became shorthand for a new kind of youth culture that scared the establishment senseless. Critics bickered over whether it was dangerous or just cool. Some said it would inspire juvenile delinquency. Others claimed it was just a movie about misunderstood youth. Legacy? The Wild One is forever etched into pop culture. It's the film that made bikers cool, teenagers dangerous, and the grown-ups officially worried. Sometimes, all you need is a black leather jacket and a bad attitude to start a revolution. Blackboard Jungle 1955. The moment Rock Around the Clock blasted over the opening credits, you knew Blackboard Jungle wasn't here to play it safe. This wasn't just a school drama, it was a hand grenade lobbed into the heart of Eisenhower-era America. Glenn Ford plays the naive teacher who walks into a New York City high school and gets a front-row seat to a teenage riot. Delinquency, violence, and the electrifying pulse of early rock and roll. For 1955, the movie was like a slap across the face. It didn't flinch from racial tension, classroom anarchy, or the terror that grown-ups felt about the coming generation. Black and Latino students, played by the likes of Sidney Poitier and Vic Morrow, weren't just background props. They had agency, attitude, and anger. The movie's raw portrayal of youth violence set off alarm bells in the press. Some critics called it incendiary, others un-American. Censors tried to cut scenes. Cities from Atlanta to Memphis banned it outright, claiming it would incite riots. In England, theaters needed extra police. Even rock music itself became controversial, with critics blaming Blackboard Jungle for the sudden explosion of youth rebellion. Teens loved it, parents, not so much. But the real kicker, the controversy, only made it hotter. Blackboard Jungle turned classroom chaos into a national obsession, sparked the first great rock and roll youth movement, and made Sidney Poitier a star. The establishment wanted to shut it down. Instead, they helped launch a new era of movies that didn't just talk down to teenagers, they let them kick the doors off the hinges. Payton Place, 1957. If you think TV soaps invented scandal, you've never seen Payton Place. This film took the all-American small town, peeled back the wallpaper, and revealed a nest of secrets. Adultery, rape, abortion, hypocrisy, and every dirty little thing the neighbors whispered about behind closed doors. Lana Turner leads a cast of repressed housewives, frustrated teens, and small-minded gossips, all choking on the suffocating perfume of respectability. The movie was a box office goldmine, but not before it whipped up a storm of outrage. Religious groups and civic organizations demanded boycotts. The Catholic Legion of Decency gave it a condemned rating. Studios worried it was too hot for American audiences. Some towns refused to screen it, and the press had a field day with headlines about immorality on Main Street. What made it such a lightning rod? Payton Place didn't wink or smirk. It just showed life as it was, or at least as people suspected it was, behind the white picket fence. No melodramatic punishments, no safe Hollywood endings. Just the uncomfortable truth that even the prettiest places have skeletons in the closet. The result? A string of Oscar nominations, a new standard for frank storytelling, and a tidal wave of imitators. Payton Place dared to expose the mess at the heart of the American dream, and Hollywood never quite managed to put the genie back in the bottle. Turns out, the juiciest stories are always the ones people wish you'd keep quiet. So, the next time someone tells you the golden age of Hollywood was all glamour and innocence, just show them this list. These films didn't just ruffle feathers, they started riots, rewrote the rulebook, and changed what movies could say, show, and provoke. Which of these shockers do you think still packs the biggest punch today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe, and share the scandal. Trust me, Hollywood's ghosts are just getting started.